When it comes to sustainability in the construction sector, much of the focus is rightfully on materials. Manufacturing processes and transport for steel, concrete, copper, plastic and aluminium release both greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane, as well as toxic pollutants into the atmosphere. This is a serious issue. Because of air pollution, children raised in urban environments can end up with stunted lung capacities, along with other undesirable outcomes that can impact their quality of life in the future. Although offsets can be bought for carbon emissions, this often simply means outsourcing emissions to other countries and does nothing to improve the air quality. Moving towards a more sustainable construction sector will require more efficient use of existing materials and switching to alternative materials that are less harmful to the environment as well as our own bodies. The reason plastic is such a useful material is because it is cheap to make, it's strong for its weight, and it does not easily biodegrade. However, these same qualities also make it particularly hazardous to the ecosphere and human health. The affordability of plastic incentivizes treating it as disposable, while the inability of bacteria and other microorganisms to break it down results in this disposed plastic accumulating as trash, which can leach toxins into the soil and cause havoc for marine life. Plastic does slowly degrade from exposure to sunlight and via mechanical force into microplastics, which move from waterways into oceans and even the atmosphere. These tiny plastic particles often end up in living organisms, including us. Many of these microplastics are also endocrine disruptors, meaning they can interfere with hormonal levels and increase the risk for a number of health issues for both humans and other animals. Using recycled plastic helps to slow down the rate of plastic trash and microplastics accumulating in our environment and our bodies. Moving away from disposables as much as possible is possibly the greatest environmental challenge for living generations. Recycling and avoiding the use of disposables treats the symptom, not the disease. But until we come up with an alternative, green materials that are economically viable, it's better than nothing. Biodegradable materials, such as wood or paper, as their name suggests, degrade naturally over time. Sourcing biodegradable materials can lead to habit destruction and fragmentation, such as by clearing native forest for timber. This can be avoided through replanting or the selective felling of individual trees. Wood also sequesters carbon from the atmosphere for a relatively long time, which compensates somewhat for the emissions caused by transporting timber on logging trucks. However, in construction, biodegradability is not conducive to the long-term strength and structure, which is why building timber is usually treated to stave off rot and burrowing insects. This treatment involves bonding toxic compounds to the wood, which can leach out over time in the form of arsenic. This is unlikely to pose much risk to the human health, but precautions should be taken and this can affect soils. It's always best to seal treated wood with either paint or special sealants. Don't burn treated wood and make sure to clean up all trimmings, mulch and sawdust and dispose of them in landfills. Treated wood is also much less biodegradable than untreated wood, which highlights a trade-off between the long-term structural integrity versus potentially harming the environment. Beyond structural support, materials also provide insulation, which affects how much power must be spent on heating and air conditioning. The more insulated a building, the less its temperature will vary with the weather. Sheep wool is relatively fire resistant, dampens sound, and is completely biodegradable. Both sheep and beef farming in New Zealand is not, on average, a carbon neutral endeavour, with only around 30% of greenhouse gas emissions offset. However, individual farms may well be carbon neutral, and sourcing from these as much as possible incentivises sustainable practices, and the agri-sector while supporting Aotearoa's primary sector. One aspect of sustainable construction that consumers can easily achieve is downsizing. Smaller homes and buildings use less materials and have lower operating needs than their larger counterparts. Other practices including incorporation of vegetation in green spaces, using composting toilets or adding solar panels for renewable energy. And to see what's happening in the industry today, check out our construction real-world stories.